Thank you, councillors. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, I respectfully ask that everyone turns their mobile phones and electronic devices to silent, please. So welcome community members, visitors and guests. It's good to see so many people in our gallery today, being an extraordinary meeting and one with only one item on the agenda. As I always say, this is an open meeting of council for the public to observe council in its decision-making process. It's a formal meeting, not a public meeting, and it has a formal process for the public to openly observe council in its decision-making process. We have one public forum speaker this morning. It's this afternoon, and we all know that when a public forum speaker or any of the councillors are speaking, to remain silent and let those people speak and give them the respect that is and courtesy that they deserve. This meeting is being videotaped and live streamed, and it is a requirement for me to, as chair, inform all present that council permits the electronic recording and broadcasting of the proceedings and meetings of council which are open to the public. Your attendance at this meeting is taken as consent to the possibility that your image and or voice may be recorded and broadcast to the public. For people in the gallery to follow the agenda, the item before council will be on the screen. We have one public forum speaker, as I mentioned, who will be presenting, which will be Dick Pearson. He'll be speaking on item 6.1, and I think Dick knows the procedure, so we'll wait till we get to that point and he can come forward. So welcome councillors, General Manager, Directors, and we'll begin in the usual way with the opening prayer. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today so that our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole of the Kempsey Shire. Amen. And Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Dunghutti people. There's one apology today, and thank you, Councillor. It's Councillor McGinn. Second? Councillor Shield, second. All in favour of accepting that apology? It's been accepted. Any declarations of interest, councillors? Councillor Horval and Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in the item 6.1 due to the fact that I live within the 3 nautical mile radius of the airport.
Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in that I live within the proposed, or my wife and myself live within the proposed area of application for the FNA within item 6.1. Also, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law and my daughter and son-in-law live within that same area.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I declare that I live very close to the 3 nautical miles limit, possibly within it.
Thank you, Councillor.
5 kilometres.
No more declarations. We'll move straight into our public forum presentation, so I'll ask Mr Pearson if you'd like to come forward. Thank you.
How's that? Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much, councillors, for allowing me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'm reasonably confident I can do that with under the 5-minute time frame. I was going to ask how many councillors have read the 100-odd page document, but I'm probably not supposed to do that. But if you have read it, you have my sympathies. Look, I'm here today basically to table a reasonable expectation to you folk. We now have an appetite for reasonable requests. That has been demonstrated in June, although that sort of went pear-shaped for a whole host of other reasons. my concern is the time frame and the project plan for the rollout of this flow-enably agreement, noise management plan. Residents have gone along with the process, even though it's dragged out, which is fine. They have put up with the incessant operations of AOAC and their aircraft, and have waited patiently to get to this point in time where something a bit more substantial can be discussed. Look, 18th of April council meeting 2007, the then director Robert Pitt put up a project time frame, and that was resolved by council at the time as resolution 2017.125. That time frame at step 7 allowed a 12-week exhibition period. It's just coincidental that we're at that Christmas period now, as was anticipated a year ago, and that period was running through January to March. From the notes on that time frame, it reads an extended exhibition period may be required to consider availability of people in the Christmas New Year period. To Mr Pitt's credit, he obviously recognised the complexity and the sensitivity of this matter, and that was a good thing. Council again resolved fundamentally to stick to that time frame, even though they are indicative. The actual dates are indicative, but the elapsed times for the events remained the same, and that was re-endorsed on 20th of February 2018 at resolution 2018.24 with reference to Appendix F, an exhibition period of 12 weeks adjusted to June to August. I think any reasonable person would realise that the December-January shutdown is a totally unreasonable time for any sort of report, much less one as complex as this and in as much detail as this, and dealing with the black art of acoustic science, which if anyone can understand, please step forward. I had some exposure to that in my time at Warragamba Dam when they were building an auxiliary spillway. Look, even council has no January meeting. Council officers are on leave, residents are on holidays. It's the busiest time of year, businesses want to wrap up, and government agencies and industry experts are just unavailable. So I implore you to do the ethical thing, don't move the goalposts, and stick to the original plan. I might just throw in a little bit of cynicism. Having worked in the public service for 40 years, we all know that bad news media releases are put out at 4 o'clock of a Friday afternoon, and contentious reports and damning reports, not that this one's necessarily damning, are put out at Christmas. There is some concern apparently about whether the report as it currently stands is fit for public exhibition. I've been on the delivery end of these sort of things at times. And you've basically got two choices. You can spend another couple of weeks and have card and tag polish this up to a fit state for public exhibition, or you can let it go as is, wait till the end of the submissions period and tidy it up then. It just depends which end of the bloody process you want to put your efforts. In my experience, it's best to clean it up at the start. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. There's no answer, so there's no questions. Okay. Item number 6.1, Kempsey Airport Noise Management Plan and Fly-Namely Advice. There is a recommend.
Move that way, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the motion with a slight amendment, and that is that the public exhibition period be extended for a period of 12 weeks from 6th of December to the 28th of February.
Second that, Madam Mayor.
And that it comes to the April 2019 meeting.
So you,
Everything as is,
okay,
but with a period of 12 weeks.
Mr. Thorogood, have you got that? So we've got that moved and we've got that seconded. Before I ask for a speaker, I was going to give the director who oversaw the report the right to speak to the report. As you know, we haven't had this report before us for very long. The councillors didn't have a briefing session on this report that I'm aware of. Did you when I was not here?
No.
So if that's okay, well, it is going to be okay. Director Mitchell, if you would like to have some time to speak to the report.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yep, the recommendation as it was included in the staff report was obviously to place the noise management plan and the fly neighbourly advice on public exhibition for a period of 7 weeks. And that decision at the time was to obviously be greater than the normal 28 days to provide some additional time for the public to review the report and to give them the opportunity to provide their submissions and responses. The recommendation also includes an item to refer the noise management plan and the fly neighbourly advice to the Office of Airspace Regulation for their comment during the public exhibition period as well. Based on the timeframes that were included, we were going to bring back the final report with a summary of all the submissions to the February council meeting. That was as was stated in the staff report that was published. As detailed in the staff report, the process for the development of the noise management plan and the fly neighbourly advice has been a very rigorous process. It's involved a high level of stakeholder engagement from airport users and also from the Kempsey Airport Reference Group. I'd like to publicly acknowledge the efforts of the four community representatives on that committee. The efforts that they contributed to the process were extensive. They attended a lot of meetings, they had a lot of documents to read right from the time of the expression of interest to engage the consultant and participating in the tender evaluation process. And then regularly turned up to meetings as we progressed through the noise monitoring and the data capture phase. They were always on hand to assist, and as that's documented within the staff report, in terms of decisions around extending the data capture period, which the consultants originally proposed 1 week. Based on advice from the reference group, we extended that to 3 weeks, and then subsequently extended it to 8 weeks to make sure that we captured a sufficient amount of data to be able to do the analysis and to come up with findings that were based on a greater representative sample of information. So I guess a big thanks to the reference group for their involvement the whole way through. What you'll see and what councillors will hopefully have had the opportunity to read and will appreciate that it's obviously a very comprehensive report. There's a number of recommendations that the expert consultants have arrived at, and that's in conjunction with the noise monitoring experts that they subcontracted part of that work out to as well. So it's a comprehensive report, contains a number of recommendations, not just in relation to the use of the airport, and I guess in particular in relation to circuit training, but also in relation to future uses of the airport. And so I guess that report's been put forward for consideration, and the recommendation from the staff's perspective is it be put out on public exhibition for comment from the public.
Thank you, Director. I'll take. You can speak to your motion now. I'll take Councillor Morris, then Councillor Horville.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Would it be possible to move into a series of question times at some point as well, please?
You're able to ask questions throughout the
Moving to workshop is implying.
throughout the meeting if you prefer. Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Now I'll take Councillor Morris.
Okay.
And then you can ask your questions throughout. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The reason that obviously I've spoken to a few people out there, and they were asking for an extended period of time, obviously because it's Christmas and because of shutdowns of certain organisations, including our own, but also probably the people that wrote the report, CASA, many others. I think it's important that we get this right, and I tend to agree with Dick a little bit when he says that, you know, that we can polish it up and whatever else, but my concern is that if we delay this and polish it up, the groups polish it up, that throughout the public exhibition period we're going to get submissions, and there might be other things that people miss, or that group misses, because they will seek technical advice from others as well. And I just think that if we polish it at the end, it's probably to a greater benefit for everybody, and also the noise management plan and the fly neighbourly advice. I just think that we may, you know, do all that work for 2 weeks or whatever it may be, put it out, and then have to do it all again and in that time. So I just believe if we get it out for an extended period of time, let people, everybody, and I mean everybody for or against it, whoever, comment on this, and then we assess it. And the reason that I asked for it to be April meeting is that it gives time to seek technical clarification on some things that may turn up on the, as we know, we talk about reports coming in at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. We're going to get submissions at 4:59 on the closing day, I'm sure. So there may be some advice that needs to be sought for clarification to put into these, or set a recommendation for us to go forward with it in April. I agree, everybody, you know, I want to thank also everybody that's been involved. You know, a lot of work's gone into it, a lot of time and money's gone into this. I hope that going forward we get it right, all the submissions come in, and then we work towards setting direction for our airport. That's pretty much all I've got to say. I just think we need to get it out there, seek advice from everybody, and then we assess it when the time comes after it closes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I'm afraid that one of the things I've always been told is you shouldn't, as a councillor, never put a document on public exhibition unless you are happy with the content of that document. I have read the whole 107 pages at least twice, in some places 3 and 4 times, and I have got some questions that I would like to have answered in regard to that. So at this stage, I will move a foreshadowed motion, because I'm quite certain it won't be an amendment. It will be perceived to be a direct negative. And that foreshadowed motion is that placing the draft noise management plan and fly neighbourly advice on public exhibition be deferred until after councillors have a workshop on the draft document. 2, prior to the councillors' workshop, that the Kempsey Airport Reference Group have their unresolved questions answered. And 3, given the complexities of the draft report and the potential impacts on the community, that when council considers placing the draft report on public exhibition, that period of public exhibition be for 12 weeks. That last point probably isn't needed because it's already been agreed that it should be extended to 12 weeks, but I still believe that should be there if it goes through as a foreshadowed motion in the event that this motion does get defeated. I equally would like to thank the reference group, and I note the emails from the 4 that in the reference group, 3 of which said that they feel that they have been rushed at the end and they haven't had a chance to fully review the document before it goes out. It would be a shame that if council doesn't make the most from the investment that they have made both financially in preparing this plan and also in time with the community and the efforts from the community members to put their efforts into generating a plan that will carry us through into the future. That could be all undone if we rush it too much at the end. And I believe it's important we have a document that goes out that meets the needs also. In addition to that, though, prior to that, because the foreshadowed motion obviously only be considered in the event that the motion gets defeated, I have got several amendments that I would like to propose for the current proposal. And they are that it be extended to 12 weeks, that's already acknowledged. That Council acknowledges that Section 8 of the draft report provides a proposed structure and initial guidance for the preparation of a fly neighbourly advice and doesn't actually provide a fly neighbourly advice. 3, after adoption of the noise management plan, that Council finalise the fly neighbourly advice and proceeds to public exhibition of this document prior to adoption. And that is clearly enunciated within the appendix that we've got. That the draft report be amended as below, and these are just a couple of the things that I've sort of noted as I'm reading through, that figure 3 is updated to more accurately show the location of localities surrounding the Kempsey Airport. If you have a look at figure 3, the arrow which says it is Kempsey is located directly over the CBD of West Kempsey. Ordervilla is shown to the south of the airport when Ordervilla actually surrounds the airport. There's no mention of Euroka, there is no mention of Sherwood, that are both localities that are in close proximity, in fact closer proximity to some of the suburbs that it's referred to in figure 3. That Appendix B of the draft report be varied by the addition of airport or train timing restrictions as included in the URSA for the airports of Archerfield, Bankstown, Evans Head, Killarney, Lake Macquarie, Launceston, Leithbridge, Maitland and Wollongong. The reason for this is they are all airports that have restrictions and would provide the community with some idea as to what sort of restrictions could be suggested or proposed for Kempsey. That Annex B of the draft report be expanded to include any restrictions on flying activities such as flight paths, restrictions on altitudes or simulated engine failures, etc., which have the impact of managing noise that impacts on the community's amenity. D, the noise abatement procedures for Evans Head and Moorabbin Airport Noise Information Pack be included in the draft report. 5, that the draft noise management plan be referred to, which we've already got there, to the Office of Airspace Regulation. That a councillor workshop on the draft document is held during the public exhibition period. That a community workshop is held to answer queries from the community in relation to the draft noise management plan and the fly neighbourly advice. That this workshop be held at least 3 weeks prior to the closing of the public exhibition period. And I would like to see the date of the council meeting when it comes back to council being removed. It should come back to the council meeting when there has been adequate time to duly assess all the submissions. I believe we shouldn't have a suspense date on it. I'd expect that that may come back on that date, but if the submissions are lengthy and need technical advice or support, they need to be assessed properly and they need to be considered fully. And if the Office of Airspace Regulation haven't responded, we need to have that report at the most timely manner, not at a specifically designated time, which may not be the most appropriate time.
That's been moved. That was what the foreshadowed motion was going to be. So,
I will second that, Madam Mayor.
no.
They are amendments to...
The foreshadow.
No, they are amendments to the original motion.
To the original motion.
They are amendments to the motion that we have got on the books. I had a foreshadowed motion
To defer.
that the motion gets defeated.
Okay.
These are considered by me as amendments to the motion that is on the table.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, can I just ask a question through yourself to Director Mitchell, just in relation to this draft report? When we say draft report, what are we relating that to when we say draft report?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Sorry. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's only basically on the draft to go out and submission. It's not the final report. So I guess the terminology that's been used is when we bring that final report after the public exhibition process, that'd be a final version at that stage.
On the public exhibition process, people will read the report and put in their submissions to their thoughts on the report, and then their recommendations that they may have got through finding out information from departments like CASA, etc. So then their recommendations would come back to us as council that we would then take into consideration. Then I think this report should go out as it is myself on draft, because this is a
Councillor, point of order. We're not debating yet. You haven't been quite the question.
This is a draft report, and I am totally happy with it going out for a further time frame, which Councillor Williams put on, so it come back to the April meeting for us to consider, not for us to make any final statement on. This is the starting of the motion. This has started back in 2017. We need to keep this moving, and this report, which I've also read, has only that it is a report on information that's been gathered.
Thank you, Councillor, but we haven't started the debate. We're still trying to get the amendment so that... Councillor Morris, question to you. If Councillor Williams has a look at this and agrees with what you would put up as an amendment incorporating it into the original motion, would you accept that?
Of course I would. There's and there may be some question as to some people may agree with some of them, some may not agree with others. The reason why I've asked for the amendments to Appendix B, because it provides the community with a greater degree of information that is out there in the general community in other airports that they may think is appropriate to Kempsey's airport. But one of the problems that I see is that the noise management plan gives us an assessment of what the noise is there at the airport. It really gives very little guidance or input as to how to manage that noise and how to reduce that noise in particular areas. Should we have height restrictions? Should we have flight path restrictions? Should we restrict certain activities to be not over residential areas? Some of the URSAs have such restrictions. We have made no mention in our draft document of those restrictions, and I believe we should confirm to the community that such restrictions do exist in other airports, and we should be considering and asking, or they should be considering, and if they think is appropriate, asking our council to impose similar restrictions for the Kempsey airport.
A question to the Director. When the process was going through and this was put out for tender for someone to do the noise management plan, were they given parameters of what to put in place for our noise management plan as outlined by Councillor Morris, stating that we should have said exactly what we wanted in the noise management plan, or is it an independent assessment of what these people have come back with?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. So a reverse brief, as we call it, was put out to the consultants, or put out generally via Tenderlink, basically outlining at a high level what we were trying to achieve with the noise management plan, and then asking for each of those organisations who would respond to the tender process to actually provide a methodology and to outline their process of how they would go through it and what they would include. And those responses from those 11 organisations from memory were then evaluated, by the reference group and staff based on their responses to that brief. But we were effectively, the reverse brief is to go out and have the experts to define the actual process for how they would approach it and to provide that methodology.
So what we've got in front of us is what has come back, and now what we're proposing, or what part of this motion is, and part of what Councillor Morris just said, is that we are now going to go back and say, well, we're now going to prescribe how you do the report. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I mean, yes, effectively, we've put it out. They've come back and provided. They provided a detailed tender response with their methodology, which is what we assessed in terms of appointing them, and them being the preferred organisation to undertake the noise management plan. You know, that said, if there's certain items that were coming back via the submission process that we wanted clarification on, then that's the process for those items to be clarified.
Okay, so what we're doing now is putting in things that may have come back in the submission process, and there may be things in the submission process that other people come back with that are contrary to what we're putting in now. Not all? Well, we don't know that because we haven't put down a public
Madam
exhibition.
Mayor, if anything, when I read it, I'd have a lot more that I want to put in. These are just the ones that jump out at me straight away. And I've got a lot more questions, but I just haven't had time to formulate because I haven't had time to read the document. But two of the things that are in there that I believe are essential is that before we make a final decision on this, we should have a councillor workshop to go through and explain and understand fully the document and the implications. And there should be a workshop for the community so that if they've got questions and concerns, because it is a fairly complex document, there are other questions in there, like there's a suggestion that we have the noise complaints register. Now, that's not in the recommendation, it's just suggested in the body of the report. So it's also, how do we notify people of this? Should we be having it on a Section 149 certificate of every property which is in the designated FMA impact area? I believe we probably should be. There are suggestions in there that there's some areas where housing will need to have special consideration for noise considerations. We need to include that in the recommendations. There's no summary of recommendations there as to how we are going to manage the noise and how we are going to, even more importantly, restrict the generation of the noise within particular areas so that there is less need for additional costs in housing development. Area 6 is one of the sites within the report that has the highest instance percentage-wise of above 70, 65 and 60 dBA, and it suggested that the housing there would need to have due consideration for noise abatement during their construction. Now that area 6 is directly over an area that we have recently approved a subdivision, and it's proposed for a rural residential subdivision. If we go through the right way, that area, the people that are building there should be warned of that, and there should be requirements within our LEP for that area for them to build their places to be noise abatement for noise consideration, which will add costs to the construction there.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
It's merely in the body of the report as a comment. This could be considered. It's not recommended that it proceed.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I can just make a couple of clarifications for the councillors and for the public as well. From a staff point of view, we have no issues with any of the amendments that Councillor Morris has put up. That's not a problem at all. We can facilitate all of that as part of the process. When the report does come back, and if council does adopt all of this, and maybe April, maybe May, what would come back to council isn't an update. There would be an update of this report, but there would actually be a noise management policy or procedure which would actually set out exactly what it is. So there'd be things such as the strategies and the recommendations in this paper would be pulled out, and that would be what council would end up being adopting. They wouldn't be adopting the final paper per se, but because that doesn't give us anything to act on. We need a policy or procedure for staff to act on, and that is what council will be presented with following all that feedback and the analysis of all that feedback. But in terms of those amendments, there's no issues with those.
Councillor
Madam Mayor.
Williams, have you had a chance to assess that?
Yes, on that advice, I would like to incorporate that into the original motion.
Councillor, you happy? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll go Councillor Hall, but I'd just like to say, and then Councillor Shields, then Councillor Baxter. Thank you, Councillor Morris. And I don't know how we capture the fact that that's been incorporated and it's part of the work that you've done. Is there a way that we can do that? I'm not sure if there is. Not in our current procedure, but I would just like to say thank you, Councillor.
Mayor, I believe the best way to do that is what I asked for in a notice of motion that was defeated a meeting so ago, and that is that we record the motions as originally moved and we acknowledge that they are changed after debate. Unfortunately, I can't get a light on so people can hear me properly because it's not. No, it's working now. And that's the reason why I moved that, so that if a motion is originally moved, I don't necessarily want my name down against moving the motions, but I particularly don't want the people that didn't do the work being acknowledged for it in the minutes. It should be that the motion as moved should be recorded, and the fact that it was varied during debates and discussion should be recorded. Now that was defeated, unfortunately, in notice of motion, with a fairly good example, I thought, as to why it should happen. And
this is
another
one,
example that last
and
week.
it's a different debate. But thank you, Councillor Morrison. We'll probably, when we do our code of meeting practice, have another look at that.
Madam Mayor, sorry. I'm happy to be on the record that I didn't make those and that Councillor Morris did. I've got no issues with that.
Okay, so long as we've got that straight.
I won't have the record, but I believe that the move,
Yes.
the motion that was moved and seconded initially should be recorded as such.
Yep.
And the motion that was voted on and changed in discussion should be recorded. Because that also indicates that we, as a group of councillors, are debating and improving things for the community.
Thank you, Councillor. All right, we'll take Councillor Horval, then Councillor Shields, then Councillor Baxter. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you
Madam
had
Mayor.
some questions. You
I
had
had some questions, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I presume, through you, Madam Mayor, Director Mitchell, the CAR group will meet again when the submissions come back. Is that expected?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. That's absolutely one of the final steps in that 10-step process was for CARG to come back, be involved in the review of the submission process, the submissions, and also review the final report, the staff report that would come back to council. So their role hasn't finished now; it will continue through to the end.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Madam Mayor, again to Director Mitchell, on page 71 of the noise report, I'm confused. I don't understand. The top of page 8 of the actual noise report, but it's page 71 of the whole document. It has a note, and I don't understand it. Only 2 out of 4 noise data from were in operational. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. There was several days throughout the 8 weeks where some of the data loggers weren't actually capturing data. That was referenced in the TAG report. This is the noise consultants report that was attached to that, where they've just made the same references. So during that period, which was the 3rd week of the monitoring, there was some days where the data wasn't actually captured.
Okay. On page 75 of the document, but page 11 of the sound report, Director Mitchell, it talks about the fact we don't have an ANF chart for Kempsey Airport, and it's not available at this stage. I find it ironic that in our KLEP, it refers to getting the ANF, Kempsey ANF document. We don't have one, so the KLEP's got a problem. Do we have to have one, and what will the cost of getting that up and running?
Through you, Madam Mayor. You're correct, there isn't an ANF chart in existence at the moment. There's no, as far as I'm aware, for general aviation airports, there's no requirement for them to have an ANF chart. RPT airports, my understanding is they do. It is something that we've obviously have been considering. It's part of the recommendation in the report from TAG to proceed with that. I don't have an indication of how much that would cost to prepare it. That would be something that we would have to assess and obviously likely bring back to council, because there'll be cost attached to that which we haven't actually budgeted or included in our operational plan.
Okay, thank you. So the KLEP will need amendment until that point, I guess. On page 12 of the noise report, it's actually page 76, is it? It's got the noise indoor design sound levels, and it talks about sleeping areas being 50, and schools, universities 50 for the library and study areas, teaching areas 55, and that's the decibel ratings, maximum expected. The noise monitoring at or near Aldervilla Public School said it had the highest incidence above 70, or second highest above 70, second highest above 65, and second highest above 60 in the decibel ratings. The school is being impacted already and over those limits, I would presume. So it's not helped by the fact that, and it's not in the report, and I couldn't find it, but maybe Director Mitchell could direct me to it because it's a long report. The simulated engine failure procedure, which is part of the training program for pilots, when they are taking off in that direction from the airport, they are doing it over the school. And of course the aeroplane is then, it's a safe procedure because they've got a very experienced instructor sitting beside the trainee pilot. But the issue is when they come down while the trainee pilot's looking for a safe landing and going through procedure, when he's found the right place to land, the instructor gives the instruction to power up again, and that's when the motor roars and it's coming down near the school. So could that be in our management plan that they don't do that activity near the school, because it at the moment is getting the highest level of sound on it?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I would recommend that that would be something that the school or concerned residents would submit via the submission process when it's out on public exhibition.
Okay, okay. And final question, and I guess this might go to the General Manager, Madam Mayor, if I could, on the reports on the number of flights on page 81, 82, or it's actually page 17, 18 of the reports, we've got the number of flights on a day, and they seem to be way above the expected numbers or the maximum numbers allowed for the training school. On the 27th of September there were 115 flights. On the 25th there was 127 flights. On the 18th of September there was 139 flights. Is there a compliance issue there, Mr. General Manager?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Horville, if you were to look at the TAG report, that actually refers in terms of how they've captured that. So they've counted, the counts reflect both the takeoff and the landing. So effectively it counts as two.
So you're halving that.
So you count it as two. Yeah, okay. and these numbers that are also referenced here are not just circuit training flights. These are total movements.
Yeah, or any other aircraft.
Captured all those airports. So you know, you can't just sort of look at it through that lens. Yeah, so there's a few other factors to it.
Okay. And right on page 105, I just realised there's one other question I would like to ask. The noise report has 4 recommendations and noise management measures. This noise report was presented to the Council on the 29th of November. Did TAG move these measures into the final report? Because it actually talks about restrictions on weekends and the number of or flights only on a daytime between 7 and 7.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yep, the reports, or the report that you're referring to, Councillor Horville, is a report from A&E, who are the noise management experts.
Yep.
They are scientists who have done the data capture. The report from TAG took into account not just the data monitoring and the science, if you like, and the analysis that was done by A&E, but also took into account the engagement they had with airport users, the benchmarking of other airports, and from that then came up with their recommendations that have been articulated in the report that take into account all of those factors in terms of the recommendations. So it's not just looking purely at data or science. the A&E's recommendation was very much looking at the standard of what classifies as a day or a night. So it's very much 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is day, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. is night. The recommendation from TAG, which has a different recommendation to what came out of the A&E recommendations, overlays the operational needs for use of an airport as well.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Shields.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We all acknowledge that this is a significant investment that's gone into this process, and it's important that we do actually get it right. I have no issues with extending the exhibition period if that's what the community desires. I am concerned, however, that CARG members themselves, 3 of the 4, felt rushed during the process. I do think it's important that it's a document that they're happy with, saying that they've been involved from the beginning. I don't actually know specifically what their issues are, because from the emails that councillors have received, it was just that they felt rushed, but they didn't actually speak of what the specific issues were with the report as such. So I do think it would be good to actually delay it for a small period. I don't know, even if we could delay it for a few weeks to get their issues sorted, and possibly could it come back to the December meeting to go on public exhibition after that. I think it's good to have a councillor workshop. Obviously, you know, today's good evidence that we're not all over this report as such. There are questions that we still have. I do agree also with a community workshop during the exhibition period. I do think that will clarify a lot of issues for people, and I think it would actually save staff time in terms of the submissions that come in, because some of them may be misdirected through not actually interpreting the document in the correct way as such. So I think it might clarify things for the community. But I do think we've got to be mindful, this is a draft document. It's never going to be perfect. That's the idea of this public exhibition period, is to actually seek community feedback, seek organisational feedback. Then we go into the nitty-gritty of what's actually going to be in it, what the resolutions will be coming out of that public exhibition period. I think it's important not to spend too much time trying to be too prescriptive at this point, because the time for that is after the submissions are actually received. So I don't want to see it go out too late. It can never be perfect. Let's get on with it. 12 weeks is a long time for it to be out on exhibition, so we are already delaying the process significantly. But yes, I agree. It should be a document that CARG are actually happy with before it goes out.
Councillor Baxter.
Yes.
And then Councillor Saul.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Could we bring up page 48 of the document? And I'd just like to agree with Councillor Shields. I think it's wonderful we're having all this consultation. This is the way it should be happening. It should be a template for every process we're having in the valley. But yeah, that's right. It's this quest for perfection. That's right. But page, you see there, risk assessment. With regard to any future proposed changes that the standard procedures at the airport, it is recommended the Council conduct a risk assessment with operational stakeholders and implementing changes to operational procedures. What I'd like to ask the Director is, just using examples to help me understand it, let's say a company comes along and wants to do skydiving, and they say, well, we want to use it on this day, that day, and fly for these amount of hours. So this document would help. We'd have to do a risk assessment with that proposal, would we? Is that what this document's saying?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, the reference to risk assessment here is largely in relation to existing users, and I guess particularly if we were to change, or if the recommendation was to make some of the changes, that particularly where there's students training, that you would need to be engaging with the college in this example to make sure that those changes wouldn't adversely impact in terms of the safety of those processes happening. So it's in relation to that, and I think there's actually an example from memory where it actually refers to the students as well.
If I can, through you, Madam Mayor, just to clarify or add to that, what putting in place a noise management plan and procedure will do will be with any new business comes in there, whether they're actually aircraft operating type business or whether they're an actually on-ground business, they'll have to operate within the parameters that the noise management plan sets up. So whether they're skydiving, whether they're an aircraft maintenance facility, whatever it is, the noise management plan applies to both.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. General Manager, how is the noise management plan enforced? Because isn't it enforced by the fly neighbourly advice, and the fly neighbourly advice is voluntary?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, it's not.
Well,
The noise management plan, once, as we said, we will be bringing back a policy or procedure for council to adopt. That allows council staff then to take enforcement actions based on that policy or procedures. It's not based on the noise on the fly neighbourly agreement, because the fly neighbourly agreement is voluntary and we cannot impose that on anyone. That is their choice. It is what the community asked for. Well before we arrived here, the community were asking for a fly neighbourly agreement. We cannot enforce that on anyone. But if council adopts a policy and procedures, and there may even be other things that council staff, when we do this analysis, put into that final report to council, then that allows us to actually act and take compliance action.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a couple of other questions. One is, it's probably to Director Mitchell, has the plan taken into account the impact of potential increases in flying numbers? Because obviously the school, or the AIAC, has been looking at expanding, and from what I can see, there's a percentage of the flights from the noise capture that are over a certain amount of noise. So therefore, if we double the number of flights, we probably get double the number of instances of that, which would then result in several of the areas going above the magic number of 30 incidences, which would make them not suitable for residential use. So has there been any impact taken for potential increases in flying activity? The other thing too is we've looked at an analysis of the night flying in the past, but we haven't looked at any potential for night flying into the future, and surely we must have some understanding from our engagement or consultation with AIAC as to what that potential might be, and we should be taking into consideration the impact that may have within this noise management plan. I've got a couple of other questions too, Madam Mayor, but I'll let Director Mitchell answer first.
One at a time.
Yeah.
Just to make it easier. So through you, Madam Mayor, in terms of the forecasting, the monitoring was obviously based on that 8-week period, which actually captured the flights that occurred during that period. The report obviously also references flight movements over the last 2 to 3 years and shows the change in those flight numbers. The report doesn't contemplate forecast or future volumes because they are unknown, and to do that would be a separate piece of work which would largely be built in with the ANEF charts as well. You would look at forecast data. The second part of your question, I think, was in relation to night flying.
Well, the historical, we haven't looked at potential future.
For night flight, once again, because there's been very limited night flights, as detailed in the report. There was no sort of data based on that was captured as part of that 8-week period. Again, that would need to be considered if there was going to be an increase in.
But there has been suggestions from AIAC with some of the previous applications that they intend to dramatically increase both the night flying activity and also the day flying activity.
Yeah,
and surely on the basis of those submissions, we could do some analysis as to what the likely impact would be from those increased activities.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's no doubt with the expertise that both the two consultants who were involved in the preparation of this report would be able to potentially do some sort of forward modelling based on that. I think that in response to that question, though, that if there was another application from the college in terms of increasing their usage of the airport, and they would be assessed in the context of what the final noise management plan would look like, and any agreements that we would then enter into them, if we were to do that in the future, would very much tie that back to the key elements of what would be the final noise management plan.
So a reasonable request from the community during the public submission period would be to ask for that modelling of projected increased flying activities and what impact that might have on them.
Yeah, they can ask. Yeah, that's it.
Another request, I suppose. So, because we hear this number, 60, 65, 70 dBA, what does it mean? It would be really good if we could have a demonstration in the councillor workshop and in the community workshop as to exactly what 60, 65 and 70 dBA means to our ears. So we could have something turn on that generates a noise of 60 dBA, so that we got some appreciation as to what we are considering when we are saying that 60 dBA is all right for somebody to sleep in.
Yep, that's through you, Madam Mayor. That's obviously something that can be considered as well. I'm sort of happy to take that on notice.
And another potential amendment that I would like to propose, which would address somewhat what Councillor Shields said, and I believe that we should be that CARG should have a further session with TAG to resolve any of their unresolved questions, and if any details emanate from that, that should go on public exhibition with the draft document as an attachment or as an appendix to it. Because they've indicated that they feel that they were rushed. We should undo that. That would then give them a greater feeling of satisfaction for the completeness of the document, and there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't add an addendum a week or 2 weeks into the public exhibition period of the further submission from CARG.
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. That's that can be accommodated. I think, you know, in terms of the intention as part of this process was always to have a councillor workshop, and I know that's proposed, but we're to do that after the submission process. And in relation
before the submission process, that course.
Yeah, I know, but I guess what we had intended was to bring TAG in once the submissions had been received, so that they could be appropriately addressed. I'm not aware of what the outstanding items or the concerns are from the CARG members. I acknowledged, and I think as they all will attest at during the meeting on Friday, that I acknowledge their concerns about the process being rushed. I mean, we've had several versions of this. You know, I think the report effectively addresses any of those concerns, but I'm not aware of what they are. But I'm happy to take them on board and we can address them.
On that basis, I'd like to move an amendment that we add a point there that a further meeting between CARG and TAG be undertaken within the next a reasonable period, say 7 days, and any comments or it's added as an addendum to the document on public exhibition.
Councillor Shields, would that alleviate some of, and I have the angst too, that the group that was put together were to oversee the process. At the end of the process, they felt they were rushed. That is a difficulty.
So we need to correct that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's why I said we should delay it going on public.
So to correct that and to give them time, I guess we have the option, and it would be good if we were all working towards a consensus in what we put up here. Mm-hmm. Between now and it's only 2 weeks to our next council meeting, whether we incorporate the amendment that Councillor Morris has just talked about.
I do have an issue with the amendment in the sense that I feel it's too prescriptive. We've paid an independent consultant to go through and write a report, and now we're already trying to preempt what some of the submissions may be, and we're already changing it before it's even gone on public exhibition as is. My feeling is I would be happy for CARG to meet prior and it go on public exhibition before Christmas, but I really think that's what the whole exhibition period is about. It's about working out all of these details so that we can come back and have those resolutions after we've considered holistically everyone's submission, rather than just cherry picking bits and pieces here from an independent report.
Madam Mayor, on the basis of the discussions, I'm prepared to amend my foreshadowed motion, and that be that the draft noise management plan for our neighbourly agreement be deferred until CARG meet and have their unresolved matters resolved. So take out the fact that we have a councillor workshop before it comes back for public exhibition, but it is deferred until after CARG meet and have their unresolved issues resolved, which means that it could be quite easily brought back to the December council meeting.
which is really, in essence, 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. Means that CARG would have to meet and the report need to come out with exactly the same report with the draft document attached.
We've virtually gone into workshop. Because
Yes, moving into before, but you didn't want it.
yeah,
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure what Councillor Morris on. Is he talking about the amendment he's moved or the foreshadowed motion?
well, the amendment,
Foreshadowed motion.
because the amendment has actually become the motion, which is what Councillor Williams has put up and Councillor Patterson has seconded. Councillor Williams, you've got your light on, so if you speak, you either
Well, I was going to
closing debate or you're going to,
debate.
and then I'll have to put up this motion.
So one thing before, actually, or before Councillor Williams closes
Yeah,
the debate.
yes, of course.
By changing my foreshadowed motion, that means that if this motion gets defeated, we simply have CARG meet, resolve their unresolved issues, and the document come back to be placed on public exhibition within 2 weeks. It takes away the need for a councillor workshop before that comes back, so it makes it a fairly short exercise that can be achieved quite easily. So I would strongly suggest to my councillors and ask for their support to deferring this with CARG meeting, resolving unresolved issues, and bring it back to the next available council meeting after that, which I would suspect would be the December council meeting.
I'm just going, Councillor Saul hasn't spoken, and Councillor Patterson has his light on. Councillor Williams, you know you always have the opportunity to withdraw your motion and second this one. You had your light on.
Yeah, on that, look, it doesn't bother me whether my name's next to it or not. I'm happy to withdraw the motion and replace it with the deferral for. That really doesn't bother me, but I just want to know whether we can actually do that and whether it's possible in that 2 week period, which it may not be.
So we have an extraordinary meeting.
Yeah, well,
As you can probably tell, I've got the flu here.
In relation to the foreshadow motion and the timing, today's the 4th of December. The council business paper gets published on the 13th or 14th of December, which is next Thursday or Friday. We would have to organise for TAG and CARG to meet, and then I'd have to clarify what resolved actually means, because issues resolved, there may be places where CARG don't agree with what the report says. So is that resolved or not?
I suppose, Mr. General Manager, I'm using the word resolved in a different context. I'm not saying that all their matters are resolved. I'm saying that their feeling of being rushed is resolved. So maybe we need to look at wording in a different way to say that CARG's concerns with the lack of time is satisfied.
My expectation would be it'll come to the February council meeting. Given that we've literally only got about seven work days at this time, I don't know what TAG's availability is. I don't know. I know when we've tried to get CARG, we can get some of them. They've been very, very good in the way they've actually cooperated with trying to get those times. But I don't know, and I can't sit here and say to you I can absolutely get it to the December council meeting, because I don't know.
But if we don't, Mr. General Manager, can't we have an extraordinary meeting in early January?
Yes, we can do that.
Madam Mayor, I wanted to speak in favour of the present motion before it's withdrawn. Is that going to happen? I'm not sure.
Which means that instead of... yes, you can. You haven't spoken yet.
No.
Because we've virtually gone into workshop.
Yep.
And we'll continue down that process for now. It is complicated, and we do need to discuss it, and we do need to discuss it in a way that we can come to some sort of resolution that is what would work the best.
Do we
don't want to
have
rush
dates
this.
on it? Can we just say that, you know, that the attached draft noise management plan and flow neighbourly advice be placed on public exhibition following a subsequent CARG and TAG meeting, and it be placed on public exhibition for 12 weeks to account for the Christmas New Year period, keep the other two the same, and then maybe the fourth part of the motion for whatever meeting it is to come back to. We spoke about March, and then add in that we also have a councillor workshop and a community workshop within the public exhibition period. Is it like, do we have to have specific dates here? Can we, because obviously we don't know when CARG and TAG can get together. Can we just say that it'll be placed on public exhibition after they have met, and it will be for 12 weeks?
And I think that's what Councillor Morris said when he was speaking before about dates.
Yeah, I was suggesting that's what we do. But
Yes.
But I was suggesting putting it out as an appendix or as an addition to the submission. But you could quite easily do that by leaving what we have got there and amending one to say that the attached draft noise management plan for neighbourly advice be placed on public exhibition for an extended period of 12 weeks following the meeting between CARG and TAG to satisfy the issues in relation to them feeling rushed.
And then that doesn't have to come back to council. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I would think that 0.4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, will probably come out of the CARG and TAG meeting anyway.
Yeah, but it can stay there anyway. And they may say...
Yet I'm just saying, if we take it out now, we're just probably going to talk about it again in 3 or 4 weeks, because that's probably going to come up and that's probably going to be something that they're going to raise as concern.
Do you follow that, Councillor?
Madam Mayor, you can actually just change 9 to a further meeting between TAG and CAG be undertaken prior to the document going on exhibition.
Yep.
Perfect.
Happy, Councillor?
Yep, that's okay.
Councillor Saul.
One concern is about the open date for that. You know, I understand the CARG would need to have a quorum, and TAG would also need to have a quorum. That may not be able to happen.
That's why we've left
The time frame is removed.
We've left the time frame, so that's covered
So
now.
what I'm saying to you, that mightn't happen until September next year.
Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
no. I don't think so. We've been waiting for this. This is what's been asked for. We need to get moving on it.
We'll still try and get this meeting before Christmas.
And
Yeah.
just on the current amendment, asking, so was that able to go back up? Yeah, well, in a moment. Good. Oh, okay, righto. We've asked for a comparison of fly neighbourly agreements or restrictions on certain airports, but I would like to add in there Port Macquarie and Coffs Harbour because they're our neighbours. I would like a comparison.
Yeah, they're already there. These are additions to it.
Additions, yeah.
While we're doing that, Councillor Horval, I called you before Councillor Saul. Councillor Saul hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, I've only asked questions too, Madam Mayor, but yes. Go ahead.
Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My goodness, today was fluid. We've never worked so fast before, I can see that. But I think it's for the benefit.
Can I just...
We touched on issues, I think it's important. We touched on Councillor Morris touched on issues of the night flying, additional hours. I think overall we're going to have a good project when it's finally completed. And if we allow extra time for the public to have a say, and they feel they've had a fair say, I think we're going to bring the community with us. So I do believe Councillor Morris should be congratulated for his efforts today. I think it's been a good start, and if we can get this reasonably underway in a shorter, an area where people can say, yes, we've had a say, we want to be heard, I think it's important. I'm going to have a say earlier items, but it's been mainly said. So basically, I'd like to see things happen. I want to see people have a say and be happy they've been heard. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Before Ashley goes, I need something on point 3, Madam Mayor. Just in relation to point 4, concern there is that the report is actually tagged. It's not actually ours to actually amend. So could that, and this is asking the mover and the seconder, that the draft, that the following information be included in the exhibition documents. So figure 3, I don't think I'll have any issues with updating that and putting more suburbs around the map. But the information in relation to the other URSAs and information in that, the information in relation to flying restrictions and the noise abatement programs, that's information that we can provide as a supplement to the exhibition document, but we're not actually asking TAG.
Mr.
What I'm trying to get at is if they don't believe they need to change their report, it's very difficult for us to instruct.
I know I'm not the mover and the seconder there, but I'm the one that put it up. I'm more than happy for it to be done that way.
Yep.
As long as the additional information is provided in a manner that the community has ready access to it. So I would want it to be in a table in a similar manner.
Yes.
In fact, what I would prefer it to be would be the whole table of Annex B being provided as an additional document with the list of the current airports and these additional ones, so that they can see the holistic list of with that.
And TAG may be happy to do this, but it's just in case they're not.
If they're not, I'm happy
then
to be
I want to be able
way.
to get the information out.
Yeah, as long as the information goes to the community for consideration.
Understand, Councillor Williams? Councillor Patterson? Councillor Horville?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I was just going to say I support what's been developed this afternoon by councillors. I'd like to talk about Appendix B of the draft report, which is 4B, and the URSAs. It's pretty eye-watering when you read them because they're full of acronyms, but with a bit of practice you get to understand that FLT means flight and ARCT is an aircraft, but the restrictions that we've been looking at on page 56 and 57 of the report talks about times of operation mostly, but it doesn't talk about the other restrictions that I've seen in other URSAs which are listed up there, where you cannot fly over the golf course, or you must do a circuit training at 1,000 feet. At the present time, it's only 500 feet. And some airports say you cannot fly over this suburb. And those are sorts of things that we should know about. And if we're going to put out an URSA specifically for Kempsey Airport, we should be able to put in all the appropriate URSA additions that look after the people under the flight path. At the moment, with the Fly Enabling Agreement is adopted, we're going to have something like 15,000 people in the restricted zone. It's nearly half the council population will be affected by the Fly Enabling advice. I keep getting agreement in my mind, I don't know why. But yes, the advice would include all of those restrictions, but the URSA is a more compulsory aspect for pilots flying in and flying around Kempsey Airport. So the URSAs can be amended, and there's a whole world of different ideas that are in those. Each one of those up there has something in it that tells you about a restriction that can be put in the URSA. We certainly don't want to stop people flying, but we certainly also want to look after the people under the flight paths.
Thank you.
Can I just seek some clarification? In 4C, I've put down there, it doesn't actually say that for all the airports that are listed, but that's what I intended when I wrote it. So I just wanted to check that the General Manager is aware that I am requesting it for all the airports that are in Appendix B, that we have any other restrictions on flying activities included.
We can do that, and what I'd look at doing, particularly on the web and in our hard copy, is actually providing the link on the Air Service website to where you can go to where you can pick every single airport across the country with the URSAs.
Yeah. The reason why I didn't ask for the URSAs to be put in, because I'd rather a summary, because they can be fairly difficult to read and fairly lengthy documents, and you don't want to give people have people in the community that may not be familiar with them to have to read 30 or 40 URSAs, because it might put them to sleep.
Councillor Morris, close debate. Not Councillor Morris, Councillor Williams, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors. I think we've got to somewhat closer to where we need to be. I'm not going to say a great deal more because there's been plenty said, and I think the community now need to have their say, and TAG and everybody else. So thank you, Councillor Morris, for putting all this to us, and I think we've done really well to work towards a better place.
Thank you, Councillor. I will put the recommendation, and then I'd just like to say a couple of words. I won't say it before, but I'll say it after. I'm going to put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against? I will record as unanimous, and I'd like to thank the councillors for the way they've worked. Particularly, I would also like to endorse what has been said about the community group that have come together, and also the people that turn up here every time we have a meeting. Mostly, and I've seen our councils meet and what goes on in their meetings. Mostly our meetings are really respectful, and it is really great to see that you do turn up and you do take an interest in what is going on. We will get a much closer, I think, agreement with what goes on at the airport. That's what we're working towards. It was asked for a noise management plan. I've publicly said that if we'd done this 2 years earlier, we may not have been in the position that we are in today. So thank you everybody for coming today. I'd also like to thank our staff. I know how hard Galen has worked in preparing this. You've come in new, you've worked really hard, you've worked with the community, you've worked with the team, and you've worked with the group that we've put together, and the same with Steve. So thank you both for the work that you've done there. And lastly, Councillor Morris, I thank you, and I thank the councillors, because this is how, when we work together, we do get good results.
But, Madam, I would just like to ask one probably matter of urgency before we close the meeting, and that is that you record in the minutes the council's appreciation of the efforts from the CARG group. Formally acknowledge and thank them for their input into this process.
Thank you, Councillor Morris, and that will be undertaken. Meeting closed. Thank you.